Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we're going to be talking about which is the better investment value for your account, Astra Yao or Qingyi. Now, as we always do on this channel, I promise you I'll be super unbiased. If you want to know my personal thoughts, I'll leave it all the way right at the end for those of you who care about that as well. But we don't waste any time on this channel, so let's go ahead and jump right into current value. Because if you are paying your hard-earned dollars, resources that you saved up, you want to know that you're getting the best bang for your buck. For those of you who have no idea what they do, maybe you are a new player into the game as well, you don't follow too much live stream, a quick recap. Astra Yao is a supportive character in general of the Aether element, and she also heals, so a bit more focus on supporting other characters. Qingyi, on the other hand, does take up a bit more field time. She does want to help stun the enemies, a lot of electric application as well while she's on field. But she also increased the stun damage multiplier. When enemies are stunned, they take more damage from her as well, which is very, very solid. A lot of characters, I would say these two are very versatile units. They can fit into a lot of teams. The key difference about who fits into which team better is stun-based characters generally are preferred if you need to do your damage in a shorter window of time. You don't mind bursting everything in a short period of time. Stun-based units are slightly better. Characters with very, very consistent damage over time, across like maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds, you don't have a burst window. Support characters generally outperform stun characters in a play style sense. So what do I mean by that? Burst heavy characters are a lot of characters in the game right now. We have Zhu Yuan, who is very, very burst heavy, does her entire rotation within a couple of seconds, the burst window, and then gets off, lets other characters take the limelight. Even characters like Miyabi can be burst heavy, she can also not be burst heavy. Alan as well, burst heavy, not burst heavy, depends on what you want. So that's why a lot of characters right now in the game do take use of stun quite well. To juxtapose this, or contrast this rather, with another character that is more sustained damage over time, is a character, for example, like Jane Doe. Jane Doe is a character that does good amounts of damage across the time she's on field. She doesn't just want to do damage in like 2 seconds and then hop off. She's a sustained damage dealer across a long period of time, not DOT sustained, damage over time sustained, but as in she does consistent damage across, maybe with spikes here and there with her overall assault, but she doesn't benefit too much from stun. That is the key stylistic difference that you need to understand about stun characters when they will function much better in the long run as well and in the current game state. So that's for Qingyi. For Astra Yao, on the other hand, she is a very, very strong buffer. She gives you a lot of buffing. Attack buff, damage buffing, whatever not, healing, sustain, everything all in one. Think the likes of like Caesar, but now in the supportive role, which means that you have access to a lot of support gear as well, W engines that is available to her. I think it's really, really fantastic. In terms of current value, if you were to just like point out of the box anyone out on the street, the one that I think would benefit more for a layman, anyone in the game, probably is going to be a support character. She's the first 5-star support. Unless we're going to get spammed with a lot more than that, then this current value section, of course, doesn't account for that as well. I'm just saying, right now in the current game state, Astra Yao might be a bit more versatile compared to Qingyi if I would throw the stone on the street, but it's really like 10 out of 10 versus like 9 out of 10. So it's, yeah, you are getting a 10% difference really, like just throwing numbers out of thin air. So that's the current value section. Looking at current value doesn't really help too much, because if we look at current value right now, all we are doing is just looking at how much they are worth in the game state. It doesn't take into account the other competition that they have. Because if there's only like one shoe manufacturer out there, Nike or Adidas, let's say for example, then you have no choice. You have to use that shoe. But if there are so many other options, then it doesn't matter just one shoe. You need to compare stuff, and that's what we are doing in this section. Qingyi, stun unit, very, very solid stun. But the truth is, we do have good alternatives for stun already in the game. If you're playing a fire, ice team, and you have lighter is already a solid, good enough reason to not want Qingyi in your team. If you have Caesar and built very well for stun, another reason why you might not need Qingyi too urgently unless you're really looking for that stun specialist. Of course, nothing's stopping you from playing like Qingyi and Astra Yao together. If you're a massive wealth whale, you can do so as well. I probably might, because I have both of these characters, because I pull for most characters in the game to create content, not because I'm a massive whale. But Qingyi definitely has a lot more alternatives than Astra Yao. If you're talking about an Aether buffer for your team, the closest comparison is Nicole, who is a very short burst heavy support, which wants your DPS to do damage in a very short period of time. Very similar to likes of the stun based characters, just in a support role, which is why Zhu Yuan has been really happy with Nicole, because Zhu Yuan is also a very burst heavy character fitting into the style. Astra Yao is more good DPS over a longer period of time, and that is where you will start to see a lot more value. It is also why some people don't really like Rina too much. Some people don't really like Nicole too much because their buff uptime is really short. They find that they need M1 Rina to really pop off, where it extends her duration of her buff by almost double. And also why some people really like Lucy, because her buff uptime is a lot more. People like Sokaku, buff uptime a lot more, although a bit niche. But she is really a very, very nice version of Lucy in that similar sense. Other competition to Astra Yao, other than the supports that we mentioned, which she is in probably a class of her own, is really Caesar. Caesar is probably the closest proxy for the role that Astra Yao will be looking for. One of the reasons is because Caesar does a lot of buffing. She does a lot of enemy damage. Enemy takes more damage, your team does more damage, attack buffing, you have shielding, some sort of protection. That generalistic kit Astra Yao provides, just that Caesar also offers you a hybrid of scaling with stun impact. Whereas Astra Yao doesn't really help you in that stun aspect, so you might need to have another character that dishes a bit of stun in the same team. Doesn't stop you from playing all of them together, but I think that this is a pretty solid comparison. The fact that a character can be alternative to Caesar is in itself a very, very good statement already, and I think it's very commendable. You have two teams, so nothing's stopping you from playing one in both sides if you need the additional sustain and additional buffing, so that is food for thought as well. Alternatives category, I think I'll go with Astra Yao because of the number of competition that Qingyi has definitely in the game. It's a little bit more available, and it's quite competitive since like Seth can also be considered for the last slot too. Next up, looking at current value. Current, talking about the current game state is nice, but we need to actually look a bit further than that, because I want you to, when you pull your resources, that's what better investment is all about, right? You want to build your account for the long-term longevity. We don't just want to talk in the present. So future value here, things that scale with time. And mainly we will be looking at a few things. And the biggest question is like power creep, which thankfully Zenless Zone 0 doesn't have too much of right now, unless they change their mind. But if you're talking about game state, as more and more characters come to the game, every character is going to suffer. No character benefits from having more characters in the game. If there is, I'll let you know, don't worry. But as you see, when Lighter came in, Qingyi's value, although she's really even more flexible than Lighter, there are teams that are closed off from her best in slot now. She's no longer like best in slot for certain teams, and as you get more and more characters coming into the game, definitely you will start to see that case. Similar for Astra Yao, she is the first support character in the game. As more and more support characters that come into the game, she will likely fall in terms of value, but of course, the rule of thumb is supportive characters are going to last a little bit longer than DPS characters, since characters like Qingyi, characters like Lighter, other than buffing, they also need to do a little bit of damage because they are taking decent amount of field time. Very easy to power creep this sense because you can just add in a new character that does more damage or even work more off field. We still don't have a stun character that just purely focus on a quick swat stun character that deals a lot of impact. If we have those kind of characters, immediately, I think the value of Qingyi and Lighter will start to dip a little bit because then you have a stun character that takes very little field time and allows you to have more options for your attack normally based character, which is very, very tremendous. So in that sense, between the two categories, support versus like stun, I think that support category likely will last a bit longer. We've seen that in a lot of Hoyoverse games as well. Limited support, you can't really go wrong. Even for a character like Caesar, she isn't like meant to do damage, and she has withstood like very good amounts of tests of time, even with the Tower of Adversity. So tons of good value. Even if you are going to have more supports in future, not all of them might heal. You can still run Astra Yao as a sustain in your tower as well. Did I just say Tower of Adversity? My goodness. But anyways, this is my opinion of future value. I think Astra Yao is also a clear win in this category. So far, we are 3-0 right now, and that is my honest opinion, comparing the two of them logically. But looking at game state is one thing. The next thing that we need to think about is potential. And this turns our attention away from like current meta game state and looking into the actual game, developers, what are their plans, what are their inklings of what they're going to do. Now we know for sure that we are going to have more, perhaps, Songs of Lyra characters. We have Evelyn that's coming up, and right now only Astra Yao is currently made known. So there is potential upside for Astra Yao as well, playing into more maybe team synergy factions of like the same type. Maybe they have a good synergy with each other. She's a very generalistic thing. So as long as we have new characters coming into the game, she likely can play into them. So that's like near-term upside for Astra Yao. Qingyi, on the other hand, her faction has already been fully matured. You have all the characters in the police faction already out. So in that sense, she doesn't get a bump in that angle of things. So Qingyi's potential is a bit capped. But one thing that these characters have, that Qingyi has edge, I know it's like very one-sided right now, where a lot of things are going to Astra Yao. But what is the key edge that Qingyi has over Astra Yao? Really is track record and stability. There are a lot of already established teams that Qingyi already has, and there's a lot of function that she has performed in, and you can see a track record. Has she performed well with time? And she is still generally one of the best. I would say like top 5 in the game for sure right now. Especially even with a lot of comparisons and competition coming in, she's still very good for a very, very early release character. Very, very versatile, very synergetic for the stun role if you're looking for a stunner. But Astra Yao is in basically a class of her own right now because support categories are always really good for investment purposes whenever we talk about it. So potential, one has faction upside, one does not. The biggest thing that limits Astra Yao from like making her probably like a must pull is that we know that Hoyoverse will want to sell you another support, limited support sooner or later, and that will try to give us a trajectory of things that happen in future. But knowing that things are going to happen is not going to prevent me from still recommending Astra Yao a bit more. In terms of potential wise, I just feel that Songs of Lyra is a better justification for Qingyi. I don't see too much uptick of Qingyi unless perhaps we have like a new characters added to police faction, new characters added to like your whatever faction as well. Then that is benefiting a lot of characters. But that's just my thoughts for the potential section. Last but not least, before I share with you my own personal bias, it's very important to talk about these two at free-to-play potential, which is I think where it starts to even out and even let Qingyi shine a little bit. There are a lot of free-to-play stun gear around, and this section we want to talk about M0 without mindscapes, without any W engines, because it's much more comparable that way, right? Qingyi has a lot of good engines. You have Precious, Fossilized Core, free to play. There are so many others as well that we've already talked about in our Qingyi videos, guide videos on the channel. You can check that out if you're interested. Astra Yao, on the other hand, is also very free to play already. You have a lot of good gear that is available to support, so many in fact. But she does maybe require a bit more. If you can invest more in better equipment for her, she likely will scale a lot better as well. Same for Qingyi. In this category here, both have really good W engines. Their team compositions are super flexible. They can fit into so many rosters. I have to give this one like a tie. So it's a plus for Qingyi because Qingyi honestly has been suffering against compared with such a strong unit in the game. And that is just my comparison between both of them. Last but not least, of course, my personal recommendation, and I realized that the screen has like been moving a bit. I'm so sorry guys, for any of you who have like mild OCD or something. But my personal thoughts between two of these is, my recommendation is Astra Yao, 100 times over. Qingyi is a solid character, no doubt, but I think Astra Yao just offers a lot more long-term value as well as near-term value for a lot of us, especially if you're lacking of sustain for the tower, the infinite floors as well. All of these are really, really solid reasons to push in the direction of Astra Yao. I just can't think of a reason not recommending her right now. If you are lacking of resources, not to worry, likely reruns will come. Now that we've already seen like a couple of reruns coming into the game, you know that more of them are going to come. So don't FOMO about it. Know that she's a good character. And if you don't really require the support, the healing, the stun at all, these two characters are still very, very good. And you can always pick up Astra Yao on a rerun. Qingyi, for those of you who really like her design, you really like her, don't let this video dissuade you. Don't let my personal opinions as well dissuade you, because if you don't pick her up now, her second rerun is likely going to be a lot further away. We don't even know. We don't even have an inkling of a sign of when a second rerun she comes back. So if you really like her, you really want her, do pick her up. I think it's really good. Long story short, you can just keep them at M0 and it'll be really, really fine as well. And if you find this video helpful, we always do this every single patch. Leave me a comment below, like, comment, and subscribe for more such future content. And check out these two other videos I think you might be interested in as well. See you guys in the next video.